And I received the call back, and all of a sudden it went from, oh, this intoxicated 19-year-old just got into an argument with his dad. They want the police out there, to this intoxicated 19-year-old is on the phone with me with a gun to his head, telling me he's about to blow his brains out.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you guys for joining me. This is No Judgment here with Tish Ross, the podcast. I'm so glad that you guys are here. Tonight, you get to hear Destiny's story. I've always wanted to know what it's like on the other side of that headset of a 911 operator's position. And one of the things that I was chatting with Destiny about earlier is what led her to this job. What is her mental health like? Because I know that has to take a toll, all the different calls that she receives, what led her or made her passionate about this. And she's also serving in the military. So you guys are going to get to hear her story. I'm so glad that you guys are here. We're going to go ahead and get started. So first, Destiny, tell us a little bit about yourself. Thank you for joining us. Sorry for all the technical difficulties that we had earlier, but
Gave me some time to quell the nerves.
so tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name's Destiny. I just recently turned 23. I've grown up in the DFW area for most of my life. Most of my childhood was spent out in Azle. I've slowly been migrating into South Fort Worth the past couple of years. I'm coming up on my fourth year as a 911 operator.
Mm.
I'm horrible about talking about myself.
That's okay. So tell me a little bit about your childhood. What kind of kiddo were you?
So we're gonna start on a heavy note here. So my childhood is a very stark contrast to the life I'm living now.
Mm.
I grew up in a very abusive home,
Mm.
single mother of three kids. I have two older brothers. The majority of my family, the environment I grew up in, I was heavily surrounded by drug addicts, and for lack of other terms, not to talk down on anybody, the very white trash stereotype.
Mm.
And that's the environment I was in until I turned around 17, graduated high school during the peak of COVID. So we got out for spring break my senior year. I shipped off to the military after all of my initial training, came back and fell into this job.
Wow. And so what branch of the military are you in, and what do you do there? What's your role there?
So I'm in the Army National Guard. I am coming up on the end of my first contract, and I'm an intelligence analyst for an Apache unit.
Wow, what does that mean?
So, being an intelligence analyst, we gather, analyze all source intel. We're typically the people in the units. We provide briefings to commanders, our higher ups about whatever mission operations we're running. We work with what we call the S3 shop to plan those missions. So it's a little bit of everything on the logistical side.
Wow, that is so amazing. Thank you for your service.
I appreciate that.
Wow, that is so awesome. And so one of the interesting things, and I love that you are here and you are sharing, because even from just the brief introduction,
Mhm.
and without going into all the details though about your growing up in an abusive environment, but look at where you are now. Look who you are. It's like so amazing. And so, not to get off the subject, but I'm sure I could go into that and just ask you all kinds of questions. Tell me a little bit about what inspired you to become a 911 operator.
So, oddly enough, it had never crossed my mind to apply for this job to be a 911 operator. At no point was it ever something I sat down and I was like, yes, that's what I want to do.
Mhm.
I got a bunch of medical certifications while I was still in high school, my CNA, PCT, phlebotomy, and originally what I wanted to do was go to the medical field. Things have a strange way of working out.
Mhm.
I had come back from my initial military training, AIT, had gotten a retail job for a couple of months just to pass the time, and I was going to start applying to hospitals looking specifically for PCT positions.
Mhm.
I had freshly turned 19, came across the application for 911 operator for the city of Fort Worth. And I remember I was like, I'll send in a resume. There's absolutely no chance I'm going to get called in for this job. And if I make the initial interview, there's no chance they're gonna give it to me. Our initial hiring class, the number of prospects that went through, I think, was near the 150 mark, if I remember correctly. And I think 20 of us made it through and got hired, and somehow I was able to slip my way in there, and 4 years later, here I am.
Oh my goodness. Wow. And you're right. Things have a way of working out the way that they're supposed to for sure. So, okay. So, was there anything about the job that surprised you once you started?
All of it. All
Really?
of it. I feel like the only things I had seen in regards to 911 operators was, the portrayals and stuff like the show 911, movies, etc. And it does not do a good job of depicting what the job actually is. You come in with this idea of this is what 911 is like, and then you get there and you do it, and everything is just so starkly different. There are challenges the job presents that I don't think normal people would think about. Nobody considers until it's in front of you, until you have
Mm.
the headset on, you're taking these calls. So all of it.
Yeah. And so, uh, how did your training prepare you or did not prepare you for? Can you think of anything specific that as you go through training, because obviously when we all go through training for jobs during training anyway, in my years during training, they obviously you would be training forever. There are things that happen unexpectedly that no one told you about. So, or maybe they did, but was there anything that you were trained for or not trained for, specifically not trained for, that surprised you when you were answering calls?
So there are a couple things I want to touch on there. First and foremost, the first time a lot of us sat down with a headset was to listen to somebody who was already taking calls. So the way the hiring process worked at the time is once you got the initial job offer, they would sit you down with an employee who already worked there, and you would listen to about 4 hours of them taking calls. And I remember the first time I sat in that chair and I put that headset on, I could not understand a single thing that was being said. And you have a lot of, callers who call in with mental health issues, or they're
Mm,
on some kind of substances. They're already speaking super quickly. You're trying to process this call, listening to that. And initially doing the job, you cannot understand a lot of what's being said. And that's something that builds on with time. I remember they're like, you're gonna get into the job and one day it's gonna hit you and you're gonna realize, you can understand everything being said now. You're gonna be able to pick up all on all of this stuff. And they were correct. It's one of those things that comes with time. But initially, no matter how much training you're put through, so difficult to understand people on those headsets.
mm. And do you get nervous? I mean, do you okay, so I would not be a good 911 operator because I think of my anxiety and I mean, I'm on medication for anxiety, so don't call me if you so I'd be like, "Oh my gosh," freaking out. Do you get nervous?
So oddly enough, I think I'm more anxious and nervous sitting in this chair right
Is
now
that
than I
right?
have been at most of my job. The training they put us through, I think, equips us very well. This is very much a job where while you're going through training, you realize this is going to be for you or this isn't going to be for you. And no hate to anybody who can't do this job. It's a very heavy job. It's
Mhm.
not for everybody, and it can definitely be a lot more taxing on others than it can on some people. But overall, I feel like you get to a point during your training where that anxiety eases. You get on the call floor, you're taking calls, and it's just not a thing. You're processing so many calls.
Mm,
I feel like you don't have time to be
gotcha.
anxious. You don't have time to be worried.
Mhm. And so what was your most memorable call that you ever took? And maybe specifically in Fort Worth? Maybe not. I don't know. What is your most memorable call?
So I think the one that stuck with me the most, it was maybe a month or so after I had just gotten cut solo. And again, to put you into perspective, freshly 19 here, I'd gone through a couple months of training. We do simulated calls for a little while, and then we go through training where we have a trainer who also has a headset on. So if we mess up the call while we're going through, they can jump in, and then you get cut solo, and all of a sudden you're taking these calls by yourself. There's nobody to fall back on. And I remember I was on second shift at the time, and this was closer to the evening. It was about 8 p.m., if I remember correctly. And I had received a call back for a call that was already set up. And initially, it was a domestic disturbance.
Mm.
A 19-year-old was intoxicated, had gotten into an altercation with his father. And I received the call back. And all of a sudden, it went from, oh, this intoxicated 19-year-old just got into an argument with his dad. They want the police out there, to this intoxicated 19-year-old is on the phone with me with a gun to his head telling me he's about to blow his brains out. And
Oh
no
my
amount
God.
of training can prepare you for your first call like that.
Mhm.
And what stuck out to me the most about this is with an agency the size of Fort Worth, calls like that are the norm. So, you may see something like that depicted on TV with a smaller agency. You have other people in the room who are also listening. You're being instructed, like, say this, say this. It's this whole big ordeal. But at an agency that size, it's just another call. So,
Mm.
I had to walk through it the best I could. Luckily, I got him to come out of the house, he had put the weapon down, came out with his arms up. Thankfully, he didn't shoot himself. Nobody got harmed. But 15 seconds after that, I was on another 911 call.
Wow. Wow. Okay. And I'm going to be skipping around because now that you've said that and it's fresh in my mind, and I'm sure people that are watching and listening. So with something like that, and then you're on another call, and then you're on another call, how has this affected you in terms of your mental health, your mental psyche? How has it affected you? And then how do you decompress? Because you do it every day. Do you do
Yes.
it every? Okay.
So when I was with Fort Worth, an agency that size, the it's split into two rooms in the building. You have one side of the building is specifically for people who are running call taking. So those are the people who are sitting down with the headset on. We're taking the 911 calls, sending the call sheet over to the dispatchers. And then you specifically have the other side of the room is dispatchers. They're on the radio with the officers, they're dispatching stuff. Um, but the unfortunate side of that is people who are stuck on that call taking end. Again, we had, when I left, it was a 7-second buffer between calls, and you're taking over 100 calls a day. Which would average, if you were working a normal shift, 8 hours, but there were weeks there where we were working 12-hour shifts when I got first initially got hired on, and it drains you very
Mm,
quickly. One of the things we had talked about earlier is, you listen to some of those recordings out there and you're just like, this dispatcher could not be more rude or
mm,
inconsiderate. But unfortunately, with a call volume like that, taking them back to back to back, compassion fatigue is a very real thing.
mm,
And I've always said I'm a people person. I try to be compassionate for everybody, but it just hits that point where you're listening to, for example, I had taken a call where a mother had woken up. They went to sleep with the baby on the bed, and the baby had rolled head first, well, face first, into a laundry bin that was next to the bed, suffocated. The mother woke up, found the baby in the laundry basket. And then the next call I'm taking after that, maybe 12 seconds after that, is somebody who's complaining because there is somebody parked on a public street in front of their house. And, just there's such a stark difference where
mm.
you go from stuff like that to stuff that, I hate to say it, it's an emergency to this person. And I don't want to discredit that,
Sure.
but also with the severity varying as much as it does, we're human. We can lose our temper sometimes. I'm not saying there's any excuse to ever talk negatively or down to, somebody who's calling us for assistance, but we aren't allowed or allotted as much time to let our emotions simmer back down when we go from something like that to just, a normal admin call.
I'm so glad that you've explained that.
Mhm.
And that explains and answers a lot in terms of the again, and I've only been watching some of the TikToks lately, but the comments that people say about a 911 operator, like you said, there's no excuse but to have now to know that there are only seconds between calls and you can go from like what you shared, someone who's getting ready to end their life, that is so much to take in. And then you get another call, like you said, someone's complained because someone is parked in front of their house or whatnot. And to not be able to have that time in between to decompress, I can, I mean, gosh, how else are you supposed to be? I mean, I know that everyone does their best. The 911 operators do their best to answer the call, obviously, and get people the help that they need. But at the same time, there's no in between. So I appreciate you explaining that, because that, I'll speak for myself, that helps me to have a little more mercy on maybe tones, or what I think is, wow, that's what a tone is that? But I don't know what phone call this person just took, and what they just have just been through, or helped somebody through, or maybe didn't help somebody through. So thank you for explaining that. That makes so much sense. Okay. So,
And I would like to interject real quick. So
yes.
you touch on tone too. Another thing I would like to mention. So typically when I'm dispatching, I try to be very soft spoken. I only raise my voice, get a little harsher if it's necessary for that call to take control of the call, as we like to call it. But there have been occasions where I've jumped from a very high adrenaline, very fast moving call that needs to get sent up, super quickly, to something where it's not as an emergent, but I have we there hasn't been that time in between to let our adrenaline simmer down. So, sometimes I'll be a little more direct when that next call picks up. And it's not that I'm trying to have a tone with the caller. It's not that we're trying to be rude with the caller, but we're still, that adrenaline's still running. So we're trying to get that information, get the call moving. The majority of the time, I feel like some people listen to these calls and they take it too personally. And it's hard not to. But first and foremost, our end of the job is to get this information so we can get you help. We can get officers out there, fire out there, depending on who you need. First and foremost, that is the critical role of our job. Emotions, feelings, all of that comes second. And I hate to say it because it sounds harsh, but
No, it makes sense. You have
Mhm.
to, it's a critical time. There's critical timing, and you have to get the information, and you need to get that to the emergency personnel, whoever
Mhm.
needs to be down there. And so I just appreciate, I'm grateful that you are here and that you said yes to coming on, because that actually helps me to be a little bit more empathetic, a little bit sweeter. So what do you do to decompress after a difficult shift? I'm sure that every night is plays on your emotions, but what do you do to decompress?
So, me specifically, I'm very heavy into working out. I go to the gym a lot, and a little over a year ago, I decided to pick up dancing. So now I do a lot of partner dancing, Latin styles, country styles, blues. That's been
That's the way that you
um,
decompress.
that's been
Okay.
my big turn too recently.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. And then how do you personally handle calls that kind of mentioned this just a minute ago with the baby that fell into the hose basket, but how do you personally handle calls that involve children, whether it's abuse or things like suffocations, or maybe a parent or someone took their child's life? How do you handle that?
So I am very privileged in the sense that I am not yet a parent, and I feel like in comparison to a lot of my coworkers who are parents who have children, they get affected by that stuff a lot more heavily, and understandably so.
Mhm.
Obviously, nobody wants to hear about kids getting hurt, kids enduring those kind of emergencies, any of that kind of trauma. But I feel like not being a parent kind of gives me the space from that to where it doesn't immediately affect me as drastically. Being a victim of childhood abuse and childhood sexual abuse myself, those stick with me. I can take the call, move on, finish a shift, and then 2 days later, the call will hit me out of nowhere, and
Mm.
I'll be like, I wonder how that turned out, or I hope that child's doing okay. I hope that they make it out of the situation. And that's another thing in a lot of these calls. We don't get the resolutions. We take the
Mm.
call, and then that's that. We move to the next one. Sometimes we're lucky enough to have officers who we can ask, hey, what do you know about how this turned out? But a lot of the time after that call is done, that's it.
Wow, and I was gonna ask that if
Mhm.
you guys ever find out the results, or like you said, is this person okay, or did this child make it? That would even weigh even more, I'm sure, on your mental health, not knowing, going call after call after call, and then at the end of your shift or going home wondering, I hope they're okay.
Mhm.
Oof, that's a lot. So, thank you to any 911 operator, to all 911 operators, all medical personnel, all police officers. I'm sure that everyone goes through the challenges that come with this job mentally, And so I just, before I forget, I just want to say thank you so much for everything that you guys do. I think that people take you guys for granted, especially, and like I said, some of the 911 operators, all of you guys are the behind the scenes heroes because you guys do take the brunt of the emergency, the initial call, the freaking out, the panic stricken, the grief stricken. And you guys have to, like you said, take control of the conversation so that you can get help to these people.
Mhm.
And so I don't think that you guys get as much recognition or any recognition as you should because of what you guys go through. And so thank you so much. And thank you everyone that that has to deal with things like this. I seriously don't think that I could do it. And it sounds like that you saw that job opportunity, perfect timing, because you seem so calm and cool and collected and able to assist. Like I said, don't call me, don't call me because we're both going to be a big mess. So let me ask you this. How do you calm callers when they are panicked and are freaked out? How do you calm them down?
Thank you for watching Prospera TV Network. We hope you're enjoying the show. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
How do you calm callers when they are panicked and are freaked out? How do you calm them down?
So a lot of the time, initially, if they call in, they're freaking out, they're screaming. I try to take control of the call. You're on the phone with me right now. You're talking to me. You have somebody here with you as you're going through this. I need you to tell me what's going on. The best you can do, you can get them to talk you through what's going on, but also remind them that even if they're physically in the situation, going through things alone, they have somebody on the phone with them. You have a person talking to you. We are going to get you help. There's going to be somebody with you. I need you to tell me what's going on. We don't want to get frustrated with the callers. Emotions are going to be emotions. There are going to be calls, in my experience, specifically ones where the caller's calling in a non emergent situation, being very abusive over the phone. Those tend to be the
Mm.
ones where I get frustrated, but with calls like that, where you're there, it's a family member, you're going through something, we're not going to get frustrated with you. We know we are in on the other end. We have the luxury of being in
Mm.
a room with AC in that chair. We're here because you are going to be having those emotions. We're here to walk you through the call because you are going to be having those emotions. It's a normal human reaction.
Mm.
And a lot of people, when faced with an emergency, we can say we would do this or we would react this way, but you're never going to know until it's you in that situation.
Mhm.
And I think for a lot of operators, and back when I was employed with Fort Worth, and we had a super high call volume, there were moments where I had to catch myself and I had to remind myself that I am at work doing a job in an
Mm.
office environment where I have the luxury of, I'm cuddled up in my chair with my little headset in an AC environment. And the people calling on the other end of this are in these high stress and situations, seeing their loved ones
Mm.
go through stuff like that. The stuff happened to their friends, or even traumatic stuff like they saw a stranger get shot.
Mm.
There were moments, and I will have to be honest, where I had to catch myself and be like, this is the situation you're in. They're gonna be frantic.
In
It's human
shock
nature.
or
Yes.
yes. Yeah. So what advice would you give to someone considering this career?
I would definitely say if you are very much an empath, this is not going to be the career for you. And I don't say that to I don't say that to talk down on anybody, But I've seen people, who have come through training and obviously the job was already affecting them negatively
Mm,
while in training. But so many people come into this with the I don't want to quit mentality. And while I admire that and I respect that, if this job isn't for you, it's not for you. For a lot of people who, if this is something they want to do and they get through training and there's just a gut feeling they have that this isn't going to be for them, that's okay. That is absolutely okay. I love my job, and while it's not a career thing, I wouldn't trade it for the world, but I can also acknowledge, it takes a very heavy mental toll, on me as is. So when you have, for lack of better terms, people with type B personalities coming in who are very easily affected, very, easily mentally swayed, not to push through it. If you have that gut feeling
mm,
of this is gonna hurt you in the long run, it
yeah, I love that. And not only is it going to hurt you in the long run, but it's certainly not helping. I agree with you. It's not to put anybody down, especially not put myself down because I certainly would not be able to help the person on the other end of the phone crying or oh my god I'm so sorry, yeah, that's not going to work. So but I love that if you get this feeling or this sense of I don't think I can do this, probably can't, and it's probably best for everybody if you're not the one answering the calls, if you feel that way. So what are some common mistakes that people do or make when they call 911? What are some of the things that maybe we can learn? I mean, like you said, when we're placed in situations, we really don't know how we're going to react or respond. But maybe if you plant the seed in our heads now, maybe if something happens in the future, we'll remember. So, what are some of the common mistakes that we make when we call? What are some things that we can do that would
So I am the biggest proponent of if somebody you love, friend, family, spouse, partner lives in an apartment complex, not only do you need their address, because a lot of people will initially consider, well, I need to know their address, get an apartment number. If they live in an apartment, write down somewhere, whether it's the notes on your phone, their contact in your phone, a book somewhere, write down that apartment number.
Mm,
A lot of people have this idea that, for example, we have a lot of people call in because their friend so and so is suicidal and they want officers to go do a welfare check on them. We can only do phone traces on numbers that directly dial 911. So while you've provided me the address, we don't have an apartment number. And unfortunately, our officers can't go, most of the time aren't able to just go to the front office. Like, let's say it's 2 a.m., you're calling this in, there's no front office for our officers to go to get that apartment number. And we can't do a cell trace because that number didn't call 911. And while we would like to get you help, a lot of the time, there's a certain amount of information we need to be able to send that help out.
mm,
So, if you know anybody that lives in an apartment that you care about, always make sure to get that apartment either number, letter. If you're calling about stuff that's occurring on freeways, highways, especially, try to get a direction of travel. It'll help our officers or our fire EMS to be able to better respond, knowing oh, they were going eastbound rather than westbound.
mm.
License plates, always, always, always write down the license plate to your vehicle somewhere, whether it's in your phone. Again, notes just somewhere. We have a lot of people who call in, well, my vehicle was stolen, but they don't know their license plates. Their insurance information was in the car, so it's not like they can access that to get the license plate for the vehicle. So just little things like that, like little details you encounter in your everyday life, the license plate, the apartment number, try to make note of those. It helps us be able to better help you.
That's such great information because I was just thinking as you were speaking about knowing your loved one's apartment numbers, I'm thinking about where my son lives and where my daughter lives. My daughter lives in Colorado, but um, I don't know her apartment number. And yeah, so if I were to have someone do a welfare check on my daughter, I don't know her apartment number. My son, I don't know his apartment number. And then I think I know my license plate number, but I could get it wrong. So that is great. That is such great information. I appreciate anything else that we can do that would, I guess, help us help you.
Off the top of my head, those are the main ones. Typically, everything else we can kind of walk you through.
Perfect. And so, what keeps you motivated to go to work every day?
I love my job. There's no other way to say it. Some people are motivated in this job and the way that they see certain goals for themselves. They want to get these certifications, they want to be a supervisor one day. But there are a lot of people who I just love my job. I since I've changed agencies, I wake up excited to come to work. I
Mm.
enjoy what I do. And while, some environments you work in they can be very thankless. This isn't a job where we really get a lot of recognition, not saying that we need that recognition. But again, when I was working at somewhere very high call volume, we were getting verbally abused, maybe 60% of those calls all day, day after day, getting told how they're going to call in a complaint on us because we had to follow a certain policy. Or I remember specifically, I had one guy threaten over the phone, and he had called on a non-emergency line with a number we couldn't trace. Didn't like the way I had said something because we had a certain policy that we had to follow, and he had threatened to come find me and rape me.
Oh my
Just stuff
gosh.
like that is so much more common than I think people realize being on our end of the headset. So there are certain environments where, again, previously I wasn't motivated to come to work. The pay was good. I had that going for me. I had bills to pay. But being in a better environment where you have staff that supports you, I love to come to work. I love to do what I do.
Mm. Wow, that is so good because a lot of people hate their jobs.
Mhm.
They don't want to go and work in whatever environment that they are in. Of course, there's not a perfect environment anywhere, I don't think. But the fact that you love your job is such a blessing for sure. Because, like I said, so many people wake up and dread going to work, and
Mhm.
we need people like you that are in the position, the field that you're in, to love their job, right? So that we get the help that we need in case of an emergency. I couldn't imagine someone hating their job and just maybe those are the calls I hear when people are like,
Typically people who are very burnt out, the pay is the only thing keeping them there.
Mm. What is one word that describes being a 911 operator?
Chaotic.
Is that right?
Most times things are very chaotic, but also it works out odd in the way that chaos is our normal, chaos is our everyday. So
Mm.
there are days, at work that are a little quieter, a little more peaceful than others. And I feel unsettled because we're so used to, 3,000 things constantly happening at once that when things do get calm or things do get quiet, it's something feels wrong, things feel off.
So you said earlier that this may not be your forever career. What does the future hold for you?
So, as of right now, I'm in school as well. I'm trying to finish up my degree in intelligence operations. Eventually, I'm wanting to do what I do on the military side. On the civilian side, we will see how that works out. Things are always open to change. I don't see myself doing this career-wise. I have so many things that I want to pursue. So
Mhm.
there's going to be something after this, whether it's what I have planned out or something completely new.
Yeah.
Only time will tell.
That's right. Wow. Okay. And so, one of the questions that I love to ask everyone, and I want you to even think about the unspoken. So, from where you've been as a child, what you've been through as a child, as a young adult, as a teenager, and where you are today after everything that you have been through, who would you say? Who would you say that Destiny is today? Who are you today?
I'm the person that 12-year-old me wanted to be.
Mm,
I would like to say I'm strong. I'm confident in what I do. I'm continuously pursuing to be better. Despite everything I have experienced, the decade-long abuse,
mm,
the broken family, just everything I've been through, I am so fortunate to be in the position I'm in. And I know there are a lot of people who wouldn't recognize that, especially a lot of people around my age. They're just graduating college, still in college. They haven't really been confronted with the severity of what adult life is actually like, and that's okay. I don't knock anybody for that. But to be where I am, I have an apartment of my own. I am able to wake up, go to the grocery store, buy my own groceries. I'm fed. I get to go to work every day to do a job that pays well, a job that I love, a job where I'm surrounded by wonderful people. I'm very, very privileged
Mm,
to be where I am and have access to the things that I do. I would say the person I am today is just in pursuit of more, in pursuit of better. Not that what I have right now isn't great, but again, I am in a position where I have the resources to do more. I have the resources to go to school, to get that education, to even, work on certs that would hop back around to 911 operating. I'm just in pursuit of being more.
wow. Well, you are one captivating young lady. And seriously, not knowing your history, but just the mention of and where you are today. And again, I don't know you a whole lot personally, but what you do, what you've shared that you do, what you are pursuing to do, going to school and working, serving in the military and being a 911 operator and loving your job and having your own apartment and yes, buying your own groceries, having a car after coming through trauma and abuse. You are one special young lady. And I am so blessed and honored that you came to share and to, I know, not only make me more aware of and to be more appreciative and a little bit more grace filled with the people that help save us from emergencies that maybe we've caused ourselves or someone else has, or a loved one that may be in jeopardy or neighbor, family or friend. I have a whole lot more respect. Not that I didn't respect before, but a whole lot more respect because of you coming and sharing. And I appreciate you and I admire you and good luck on your future endeavors. I'll be watching.
I wanted to say thank you for, giving me this platform. So many of us would love the opportunity to speak about what happens behind the scenes.
Mm.
Just so often there's not an audience for that. There's not a platform for that. So thank you for inviting me out here and inviting me to share a little bit of what goes on behind the headset.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Destiny. I so appreciate you. And thank you guys all for joining me and for hopping on to this other podcast live. We will see you guys next week. I have a treat for you guys. So you have to tune in on Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thank you guys for joining me on No Judgment Here, the podcast. And thank you, Destiny, for coming on and being a guest for us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. You guys all have a good night. That's right, Melinda. Melinda Dobson says, and she's a beautiful woman.
Thank you.
Most definitely. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week. Have a good night.
This is your Prospera era, where dreams align with grace, abundance flows like rivers. You've stepped into your place. Rise, reign, and remember, you were born to shine. Welcome to your moment, Prospera, it's time.
We hope you enjoyed today's show on Prospera TV Network. Make it a point to visit us on YouTube and catch all your favorite shows anytime you want. Interested in hosting a show of your own? Or advertising your business on our network? Contact Elena Rodriguez,